Welcome to Sinkowitz, hosted by the fearless Linda Sinkowitz. She's syncing you up with the latest in election integrity, from breaking headlines to critical updates you won't hear anywhere else. With Linda, it's facts first as she leads the fight for one vote for one legal voter. Stay informed, stay empowered. Let's jump in.
Hi, and welcome to Sinkowitz. My name is Linda Sinkowitz. I'm the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. And we want to thank OBBM Network TV for hosting our program. This is our 15th episode, and I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what today's broadcast is going to be about. My guest this week is Josh Bernstein. He's an investigative reporter. He also has a book that's out, and we're going to have a wonderful conversation with him in just about 2 minutes. So the states we're going to talk about this week are Arizona, Florida, Iowa, Montana, Ohio, Wyoming. Then I have some national stuff we're going to talk about. And our vote notes for this week is going to be from Michigan. It's their Chamber of Commerce, and we'll explain more towards the end on that. We'll go through our trivia question and then my final thoughts. All right, so let's go right to our guest this week. This is Josh Bernstein. Welcome, Josh.
Great to be back on the program with you.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. I know we kind of woke you up early.
That's okay. Yeah, it's about 3 hours difference, but that's okay. Anything to talk about voter fraud and all the other things that we know go on in our elections is extremely important issues. So I'm ready to get to it.
Okay. So why don't you give us a little background on yourself?
Well, I've been in broadcasting for well over 12 years now. I'm one of the most censored people, sadly, still in the country. Right before the 2020 election, I was doing an interview with Russell Ramsland from Allied Security out of Texas, and we were showing votes being switched live on CNN in the 2018 Andy Beshear, Matt Bevin Kentucky governor's race. And what they were doing in a split second is they were taking votes away live on CNN. You could see it in a split second, and they were giving them to Andy Beshear and taking them from Matt Bevin. So we were discussing that, and we were saying, look, this type of mechanism and vote counting outside of the United States, from Seidel to SGO to Smartmatic to all these different companies, they are doing their vote counting outside of the United States, and they are literally in split seconds stealing votes away and giving them to the other person, to the Democrat in this case. And so I was showing it, and I was slowing it down and showing it and slowing it down and circling it and all that good stuff. And I had about 900,000 views on it in less than 36 hours. And from that, I lost both of my YouTube channels. And then right around the same time, before the election, there was a big story with James O'Keefe at the time with Project Veritas. I've interviewed James, good guy. And he was talking about Little Mogadishu, which is basically the St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota area. Mm-hmm. And what they were doing with ballot harvesting operations. And it was tied to Ilhan Omar, or her real name, Ilhan Nuar Saeed Elmi, and her chief of staff. And they were doing ballot harvesting operations. And so I was exposing that, but going even further, as I usually do as an investigative journalist. And I was explaining that Ilhan Nuar Saeed Elmi lied on her N-400 immigration naturalization forms when she was asked the question, have you ever been part of or associated with any type of totalitarian or authoritarian regime? And she said no to that. And her father, Muhammad Nuar, who was in the country illegally as well, also said no to that. Well, the reason that's not accurate is because Muhammad Nuar, which was her father, was the propaganda minister for the former dictatorship in Somalia under Saeed Bayar's dictatorship. So if they didn't leave Somalia, they would have been, meeting their demise. And so they came to America. They lied about that. And then she infiltrated Congress. And so through all that, I explained who she was, how she got here, her history. And from there, well, I lost pretty much everything else. My Amazon Prime show, my Roku TV channel show as well. Patreon, LinkedIn, X, which was Twitter at the time, Instagram, Facebook, all of it. I was ghosted and gone within about a 48-hour period. So for the last 5 years, I had my website, but the amount of attacks, 10,000 attacks a day, and the amount of expenditures as far as for security and things like that just got to be too much. So I ended up closing the website and moving my show over to Substack, where I'm at now, which is jbushow.substack.com. And of course, I wrote my
Well,
book, Liberty, to get through a lot of the censorship. So it's been an ordeal, but I wouldn't change anything because everything is the truth, and sometimes the truth can be known as hate speech.
yeah. So you definitely went through a lot more than we have gone through. It just reminded me of, with the Associated Press, there's a way to get your press releases out there. You pay X amount of dollars and they'll push them out. Um, they wouldn't let us send out our press releases. And
Mhm.
it was just like, well, there's nothing that we're saying that isn't true. So it's the same thing. The censorship
Oh yeah,
that goes on is unbelievable. And the attacks that we had on our website, especially back in September, October. And then we ended up getting a ransomware on top of that. I mean, it was pretty nasty for a while. We're back up and running. No, we did not pay the money. We ended up having to rebuild everything. But
gotcha.
yeah, I mean, people don't understand the censorship that's going on, and it's not completely gone yet either.
Correct.
It's
Yeah, I'm
getting
still
there.
not on YouTube.
Yeah,
I'm on X now, finally. So I'm at Real JBU Show is my X handle, at Real JBU Show, and I'm on Substack, and that's pretty much about it. LinkedIn, I finally got my LinkedIn account back in December of 2024. So those are the three. Everything else, I've appealed for my YouTube channels numerous times, and to no avail. So yeah,
uh,
it's been tough,
I
but I'm a public figure, and because of that, I have a Wikipedia site, and so people can still find me, even though it is more difficult these days, sadly.
well, I am really hoping this administration is gonna take care of it in one way or another for the censorship that is
Yeah,
still going on. I mean, free speech. We should have free speech. If you have organizations like NPR out there, I mean, you and I were chatting a
National
little bit
Progressive
before.
Radio.
Yeah, before we came on air. I mean, it's like, really? You can compare articles, one article to another article on the same exact thing, and honestly, you wouldn't even know it was the same thing.
Yeah. Well, look,
Um,
that's why I call the media. President Trump likes to call it fake news. I call them prostitutes. Because let's face it, that's basically what they are. They are prostitutes, and they sell a certain story, and if it leads, it bleeds, and sensationalism, and they are very loose with the truth. Let's face it, they don't really do much when it comes to having the truth. One of the things that I talk about in my book is a truth in media act that I talk about in chapter 10. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do to fix a lot of our issues, and quite frankly, some of them are very, very easy and very, very simple. You could knock out 40% of voter fraud with just doing two things.
well, why don't you tell us about that?
Well, if we pass the SAVE Act,
Mhm.
and if we did this on a national level, and we mandated two things: number one, voter ID in all 50 states, or if you're Barack Obama, all 57 states. But I digress. And if you did that, and of course, if you got rid of the fact that nobody at any level, whether it be the federal level, the state level, the local level, can vote in our elections if they're not a US citizen. If you eliminate those two things, and then, of course, rebrand in a way the census to not count the illegal alien voters, you would then take away House seats and congressional seats away from the left that are superimposed and artificially inflated as they are now, and you would have probably 35 to 40% right there of all voter fraud pretty much taken care of from that point. Of course,
Oh,
then you have more things to do. You've got to get rid of these machines. You've got to get rid of all this voting season, right? It used to be a voting day. And by the way, I'm not a fan of a voting holiday where you have off. I say this: if you can go at 6 o'clock in the morning and you can go vote, and then you have a national law that says that you're not allowed to be fired if you go to vote on election day, and you have 3 hours, I think it is, in most states to go out and vote, and then you can also go and vote until usually 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, right? Some states it closes really late. So you have 3 opportunities within that quote election day to go vote. And I always say, if you can't get there in that amount of time, I probably don't want you to vote anyway.
No, you're right. And same day registration,
Is
absolutely not.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Absolutely
And
not.
also, you shouldn't be able, if you move to another state, I think you should have to skip one election cycle so that we don't have these people that live in, let's say, New York, and then they have a summer home in Savannah, and then they come in and they vote in Georgia, and then they don't really live there, and so they go back to New York, and now you're committing voter fraud essentially. But we have a lot of these people that will jump over to the next state just to change the vote
Oh,
in the
yeah,
electorate.
we found them. That's part of what fight voter fraud does. I
Exactly.
believe it's Montana, I think we're gonna be talking about today, that they are requiring a 30-day residency before they're allowed to vote, register to vote, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's a good start in the right direction. I would like to see a law in which you have to miss an entire election cycle until you come into the next state, because I think we have to make this extremely, extremely fair. And the other thing we got to do is no more sandbagging. I was having a conversation with Garland Favorito from Voter GA, good guy. I've known him for a long time. And we were watching the returns coming in on the runoff between Warnock and Herschel Walker. And you can clearly see Herschel Walker was up 12, 13 percentage points, just killing it. But yet, Fulton County was still not reporting. So I called Garland. I said, Garland, what's going on here? You're in the state. What are they doing? He goes, they're sandbagging. I said, really? I said, is he going to pull this out? He goes, I don't think so. Because what they were doing is they were waiting for all the red counties to report, all the red counties coming in, right? Clearly for
Mhm.
Herschel Walker. And then Fulton County sitting back and lagging. And then they're looking to see how many votes, and I'll use the word, they needed to steal in order to facilitate putting Warnock in the Senate. And then they can report to the news, whoo, that was a nail biter, but it was a real close race, wink, wink. And
Yeah.
Warnock won. So we've got to get rid of sandbagging, where everybody needs to report. Every single county needs to report by 12 o'clock midnight. That's also in my book in chapter 3, Balancing the Electorate. And that way you would get away from the sandbagging, because that's what happens. A lot of these states will do that. You'll notice the whole state's red, but then Denver hasn't reported, or Philadelphia hasn't reported, or Allegheny hasn't reported. I mean, whatever it may be, or Wayne County, or Maricopa, wherever it may be. And that is the problem, because that's how they steal elections. They look and they say, okay, we need this many more votes to canvass and to bank, so that we can then report that the Democrat won. And they do that
Right.
all the time. It's sad.
Right. Yeah, and in Georgia during that race, I was trying to remember the Democratic organization that was out promoting people just to go and register in Georgia. Just go. You
Probably
don't have to live there.
Stacey
Just
Abrams's group would be my
just
guess.
get out there and register in Georgia, which is why it's so important. I know in Connecticut a number of years ago, it was a 6 months residency before you can vote. And then they
Yeah.
eliminated it completely. So with Montana, with the 30 days, because federal law actually allows you to still vote in your previous address if it's 30 days or less. You can still vote even if you sold your house for that
Hmm.
final time. But to not have any resident restriction just leaves it wide open.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
that and same day registration. You've got 365 days in a year. At some point, you got 5 days a week that your town clerk or your election offices are open to register. You can even register in some states online, and you have to wait to the same day for the election before you bother to register because, oh, it's so important to you.
Yeah,
If it was
exactly.
important, you would have registered ahead of time.
Yeah, and look, we got to get rid of these voting seasons. Okay, this
Ugh,
is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, you
yeah,
have states like North Carolina; it's like 45 days, 60 days of early voting. I mean, it's absolutely insane. These mail-in ballots. Look, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that any American has the right to vote. Dot 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 by mail. Okay, it doesn't
right.
exist in the Constitution anywhere. This is something that has been made up in the last, 30, 40 years, whatever it may be. And we've got to get away from that. We also have to get rid of these machines. I say in my book, Preserving Liberty, and one of the things that I talk about is tyranny is sold as convenience. Oh, don't worry about
Right.
it. Just click that button on the screen. Your vote will be fine. It'll be safe. No problem. What? No, of course they're not logged in to the internet. We would never do that.
Yeah.
We've
Oh,
got to
what's
get
that
rid of
modem
these
behind
machines.
you? Yeah.
We've got to get rid of these machines.
Yeah. We need to make sure that every vote counts. But what we hear constantly, like from what's that woman's group? Woman League of Women
League of Women's
Voters.
Voters. Ugh.
Oh, you're disenfranchising everybody. It's an inconvenience to this race or to that person or to women. What if they change their names? And no, it's not an inconvenience to show an ID. It is not an
Exactly.
inconvenience to be a US citizen in order to
You need
vote.
an ID to buy alcohol. You need an ID to buy, just about anything. You need an ID to drive. You need an ID to buy a house. You need an ID to do so many different things, but yet you don't need one to vote, which is the most important thing and the most important right that we have. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And you know what it is? It's also racist. It's
Mhm.
racist against minorities to say that you can't get yourself an ID. Somehow you're going to be disenfranchised if you have to show ID. I'm sorry, that's just racist in and of itself for anyone that says that. It's
I think
crazy.
one of the best Congress people that had something to say about that was Wesley Hunt from Texas.
Sure.
And I forgot what episode we had it on that we actually showed the clip. I mean, he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he also graduated from West Point and a whole bunch of other things. And I think while standing there speaking, he pulled out 6 different types of ID that he himself had on him.
Yep.
Just trying to show how
I think I remember
ridiculous.
that clip. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's phenomenal. Like I said, one of the other things that I really believe we need to check into are the election officials,
Yeah.
making sure there's certifications because every state should have some certifications on them. I mean, we know here in Connecticut that we've got tons of them that are not certified, that shouldn't even be able to run elections. So you need to make sure you have people in place that know their jobs, that follow the law. Don't pick and choose which laws they want to follow at that time. And then also make the secretaries of state accountable. They're supposed to
Yeah.
be in charge of the election officials. And, as we just sent on June 13th here in Connecticut for the dereliction of duty by the Secretary of State, not doing her job, not following through. If you have someone, a subordinate working with you who are not certified, you are supposed to report them. It's a
Yeah. Well,
violation of ethics.
you want to talk about someone that had a conflict of interest. My goodness. Secretary of State Katie Hobbs
Yeah.
in Arizona running for the governorship. I mean,
Hmm.
it's right in Arizona revised statutes that it was a major conflict of interest. Not to mention the fact that 65 to 70% of the machines went down. Not to mention the fact that the BOD printers actually were discontinued in the state of Arizona, and yet they still use them anyway. We also know that the paper was not of the right size. And so they sabotaged everything. And that's why I'm not a fan of early voting, because what was happening is they understood that people were going to come out on election day and they were going to vote overwhelmingly for Kari Lake. So what did they do? They sabotaged the machines on election day so that they could steal that race. And I've said that 100,000 times, and it's 100% true. So then what happened? Well, we had to change our tactics. President Trump wanted us to vote early, right? Everyone bank your vote early, everything. And so we said, okay, well, if they're going to steal it on election day, we have to over inundate the system with all of our votes, and we had to vote early. Now, I'm not a fan of voting early, but I'll tell you right now, I voted about 3 to 4 days before the election because I was worried, as most people were, that they were going to do that once again. But thankfully, we made it too big to rig, as President Trump likes to say.
Yes, thank goodness for that. Well, we want to let everybody know how to reach you, Josh.
Sure, sure.
You want to give us
You
that?
can go to, yeah, you can go to JBU Show, so JBUSHOW dot substack.com, jbushow.substack.com. You can also go to Amazon and you can pick up a hard copy of Preserving Liberty. This book right here has been endorsed by Alan Dershowitz for its constitutionality. It's not self-published, meaning that I went through a publishing company. Congressman Paul Gosar is a good buddy of mine from the Freedom Caucus. He wrote the foreword to the book. Roger Stone, a good buddy of mine as well, he's endorsed the book. And then some big time hitters in Arizona as far as election integrity are concerned. State Senator Wendy Rogers, a very close personal friend of mine. Sonny Borelli has endorsed the book. Anthony Kern has endorsed the book. Sheriff Mark Lamb has endorsed the book. And then a whole bunch of other people as well. And what it's about is preserving liberty. And I literally go through our issues and our problems, and I show you exactly how to solve them. There's actually 10 separate legislative ideas that I've come up with in the book to help us preserve our liberty. And of course, like I said, I have Congressman Paul Gosar, who wrote the foreword, so that he can introduce some of this stuff into Congress so that we can get some of this stuff passed.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on our program on Sinkowitz. We really appreciate it, and we definitely will have you back on again. Thank
You
you.
got it. Anytime, any topic.
Great, thanks. And we're going to go to a quick break right now.
Infamous ballot drop box.
Wanda's been arrested.
Around the world, people are aware of Wanda the ballot stuffer.
When fraud cancels you.
3 other Bridgeport Democrats were charged.
It's outrageous.
Take the freedom of our vote.
You gotta fight.
We're supposed to have quick justice.
Linda Sinkowitz is the election integrity watchdog in America's corner. Digging into the data to scrub the voter rolls clean, protecting your rights, respecting our Constitution. For years, Linda's mission-driven advocacy has helped preserve the Republic, exposing corruption.
The Chief State's Attorney's Office is not doing their job.
Speaking truth to power. It's pretty simple. One vote for one legal voter. FightVoterFraud.org.
Join the Army.
Hi, and welcome back to Sinkowitz. My name is Linda Sinkowitz. Again, I'm the founder and CEO of Fight Voter Fraud. And again, thank you to OBBM Network TV. And I want to also thank my guest again, Josh Bernstein, for coming on this week. So let's get right to our first state. Our first state in alphabetical order is Arizona. So let's see what's going on in Arizona. Our source information for this is both Fox 10 from Phoenix and Arizona's Family, and this is from June 29th, 2025. So the recorder's office blames the vendor after thousands of voters were incorrectly flagged. So thousands of Maricopa County voters were incorrectly notified their voting rights were jeopardized due to an error, requiring them to provide proof of citizenship within 90 days of a local election. The county blames a vendor for the mix-up, while recorder Justin Heap remains unavailable for direct comment, drawing criticism from his predecessor, Stephen Richter, regarding leadership and communication. Now, they're trying to communicate more of what's going on. And when you have somebody who is not commenting when there's an issue, it creates more of an issue. So anyway, Stephen Richter, he was the former county recorder, that's for Maricopa County, explains that two lists had gotten mixed up. The letter they were supposed to receive pertains to that special group of people who still needed to provide proof of citizenship because the motor vehicle department had thought they had been grandfathered into the document for proof of citizenship requirement, but they actually haven't, and that was actually discovered last year. Now, Recorder Keep, the one who wasn't talking, is now saying that the factors that led up to 83,000 people receiving erroneous letters. He says the first error occurred when a vendor inadvertently switched the contents of the proof. The second error occurred when an employee of the Maricopa County Registrar's or Recorder's Office mistakenly approved the incorrect proof. So you have two things going wrong there. The mix-up, according to AZ Family, caused chaos and confusion. The letter sent said the voters receiving their erroneous letters indicated that they had moved, making some think that they had their identities stolen. Now, Arizona Department of Transportation was asked about the, quote, glitch that Janine Petty, she's the senior director of voter registration, had referenced, and a spokesman said the problem affects anyone who got their license before October 1st of 1996. That group of people must provide proof of citizenship in order to vote in future elections. Now, Maricopa County officials, they were just playing the blame game. Honestly, in reading the articles, one is accusing the other and back and forth and back and forth. Now, remember the last show we had, Runbeck was having issues concerning the counting of the ballots and the mix-up with the out-of-state ballots that came into their section. So Arizona still continues to have, quote, glitches and mix-ups and problems, and most of it is actually in Maricopa County. Now, Maricopa County actually takes care of their own voter rolls and their election information. And I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, I believe there was one other county out of the 15 that also did the same thing. So again, Maricopa County, Arizona is in the news again. So now let's go to Florida. Florida, our sources are the Florida Daily from June of 2025, Florida Politics from June 2nd, and the Miami Times from June 27th, 2025. First, we're going to start off with the Mexican national Juan Arturo Martinez, 62, lived illegally in the U.S. for decades, and he was just sentenced to 4 months in federal prison. He admitted to using fraudulent identity in February of 2025 to obtain a U.S. passport and voted in presidential elections. He also lied multiple times on passport applications from 2002, 2012, and 2022. So he's been lying on stuff for a very long time, and he has been voting. 4 months, I do not believe, is enough. But that's my personal opinion. We also had, in April of 2025, Ukrainian nationals Slavana Demenko and her daughter, Yelitsavanta, and they were charged with illegally voting in the presidential election in 2024 in Palm Beach County, Florida. Our next story has to do with what's going on in Miami. So there's a Miami mayor candidate. He just sued to block the delay and calls the move outrageous. So former Miami city manager Emilio Gonzalez is one of 9 candidates running for mayor. He used to be the city manager again for Miami. And it's all because they have canceled the election for November. So he filed lawsuit because The city commissioner's decision, which was 3-2, they decided they didn't want to run the local elections during an odd year and had decided to change it to an even year. And what that did was gave the mayor and the commissioners an additional year in office, something that the voters did not vote for. And doing it without voter consent was, quote, both outrageous abuse of power and illegal. Now, citing prior warnings, even Governor DeSantis and the Attorney General James Uthmeier were also against it. So the Miami Commission, like I said, voted 3-2 last week to adopt this ordinance, moving the city election from odd to even years and extending the terms. The change, if it stands, will confer all the commissioners and Mayor Francis Suarez an extra year in office while denying 17 others that were running as candidates. Now, this was just something that was all of a sudden. This is what they decided to do. So again, the voters themselves were cut out of the process, and there appears to be lots of rhetoric and nasty comments by everyone involved. Like I said, what I do is I go through different stories and I gather the information, and I'll tell you, some of them are a little difficult to read through with all the information and all the quotes that are given. So I am really hoping that in Florida, they deny this going forward and allow them to be on the election. If you want to make the changes, you have it as something during the election. Find out from the voters what they want. Have a meeting. Don't just have, as it turns out, 3 people deciding the election and changing the year and giving the mayor and the commissioners an extra year that the voters did not vote for. Again, my personal opinion. All right, the next state we're going to go to is Iowa. Now, the source is the Washington Post, and this is from July 1st, 2025. So Trump drops the federal lawsuit against the Iowa pollster, but they refiled in state court. So the president sued pollster J. Ann Sears and the Des Moines Register over a polling that had showed Kamala Harris leading in Iowa, a state won by Trump, before the 2024 election. The lawsuit was originally filed in December of 2024 over a poll that showed him trailing the Vice President Kamala Harris in a state just days again before the election, calling it election interference. And he accused the newspaper of violating the Consumer Fraud Act. Seltzer's legal team argued that it was free speech protected by the First Amendment and that Trump misunderstands the legal concept of fraud. I don't think so. They argued that Trump and his co-plaintiffs, Bradley Zahn, he was a Republican former senator, and federal representative Marianne Antoinette Miller Meeks had previously had their case remanded to the state court and were refused. An appeal of this decision is still active, and they added in a motion on Monday. The poll drew national attention because it showed Harris leading Trump in a red state by 3 percentage points with a margin of error of 3 to 4 percentage points. And it ended up that Trump won Iowa by 13 points. I would say that's a huge difference. Let's see what happens with us. Remember CBS and ABC lawsuits? The CBS case is still ongoing with the editing of the Harris interview, which amounts to election interference, and the settlement by ABC for the defamation lawsuit for the $15 million. So do media organizations do things they shouldn't be doing? Heck yeah. For whatever reason, again, they decided to pull it out of federal court and put it back into the state courts. So we'll keep watching that to see how that one goes. So the next state we're going to go to is Montana. Now, the source for Montana is JD Supra from June 30th, 2025. Campaign finance and lobbying compliance. So, a coalition of former public office holders is pushing to end the corporate political spending in Montana politics via proposed constitutional initiative. They aim to qualify for the 2026 election. The Transparent Election Initiative, which is TEI, is a nonprofit organization founded by former commissioner of political parties, is Jeff Mangan. Its central effort is the Montana Plan, a proposed 2026 constitutional initiative that would amend new and existing corporate charters in the state to explicitly prevent corporations from spending in local politics. Montana requires out-of-state firms to adhere to in-state laws, which would effectively delegate the new restrictions to any entity moving money within Montana. Mangan said the plan would work by blocking corporations from contributing to elections through political action committees. Because of the ban, individuals would no longer be able to anonymously give to a corporation that in turn donates to a political action committee. So that's how it works. They donate anonymously to a corporation, and then the corporation donates the money through the political action committee. So TCI's constitutional initiative would block that two-step workaround currently enabling administrative and logistical hurdles, including language reviewed by the Legislative Services Division, an Attorney General's asset of the measure's legal structure, and comprehensive signature gathering campaign the Secretary of State's office will review. So essentially, they're making sure that the wording on the document where they're out there looking for signatures is correct and not misleading, and they have to follow the very specific laws that they were talking about. So that was Montana. Now let's go to Ohio. Ohio, our source is WFMJ 21 NBC, and this is from July 1st. The Ohio budget. Devine partially vetoes election integrity clause. Now I'm looking at this going, okay, he partially vetoed it, which meant when I read that, obviously he has the ability to line item veto, which the article did say he does have that ability to do in the state's 2-year budget that would have created a new election integrity unit within the Ohio Secretary of State's office, citing concerns about potential ethical conflicts for prosecutors and undermining the public confidence and also in the justice system. Now, he used his line item veto to strike down part of the measure he argued could lead to unintended consequences, which would be the investigation and the prosecution of alleged election law violations. Now, the proposed election integrity unit was intended to investigate violations of election and campaign finance law. The language vetoed specifically mandated that prosecuting authorities within 1 year of receiving a referral from the unit either prosecute the violation, request additional evidence, or decline to prosecute. If a local prosecutor declined, the unit can then refer the case to the Ohio Attorney General. DeWine was concerned about this because the time frame the prosecutors had in order to initiate the investigation, and then if they wanted to, they could, decline everything, and then the Attorney General would take it up. So potentially it could be a form where they were shopping, and it would undermine the public's confidence in the justice system. It still allows the potential establishment of the unit focused on election integrity, with modifications in its operational framework. So they do have the right idea in mind for this. I do have to commend the governor on his line item veto for that. It's the wording of it and how it was done. Unfortunately, the Ohio legislature didn't catch that, or if they did, I'm not sure what parties are in charge there. But anyway, kudos to the governor for catching that, and I'm sure there will be some other things going on within that election integrity unit. Now on to Wyoming. Now, Wyoming, our source is from the Department of Justice, July 1st, 2025. The Wyoming Tribune Eagle, and that's on June 30th, 2025. And News from the States, July 1st of 2025. Justice Department files a statement of interest in the Wyoming case to defend documentary proof of citizenship requirement for voter registration. Now, the Justice Department filed a statement of interest in the lawsuit by Equality State Policy Center versus Chuck Gray, defending Wyoming's legitimate interest in securing voting processes from fraud by requiring documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote. I'll tell you, kudos to Wyoming for getting that through and passing that. But of course, we always have people who do not want to have only U.S. citizens voting, and let's see what they have to say about it. So first of all, we have the long-standing Supreme Court precedent that recognizes that states have a significant interest in preventing fraud and safeguarding voter confidence in the election process. Wyoming's documentary proof of citizenship law is a mechanism to enforce laws that prohibit non-citizen voting and ensure that only eligible voters cast ballots. I think that's reasonable, more than reasonable. Quote, it's a crime for non-citizens to vote in federal elections, and it's important that the American people have confidence in the integrity of the elections, said Deputy Assistant Attorney General Michael Gates of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Quote, requiring documentary proof of citizenship is common sense and ensures that only citizens vote, unquote. The Civil Rights Division voting section enforces the civil provisions of the federal statutes that protect the integrity of the vote, including the Voting Rights Act, the National Voter Registration Act, Help America Vote Act, and the Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act. Now, also the Republican National Committee, they want to hop in there too and defend Wyoming with their stricter law. Kudos to them as well. Now, the law requires that a person has to provide proof of state residency and U.S. citizenship when registering to vote. The law will require someone registering to vote to attest that they have been a resident of Wyoming for at least 30 days. Now, at the beginning of the segment, I did misspeak. I said it was Montana that had this 30 days. It was actually Wyoming. So I want to make that correction for the record that Wyoming is the one that put in the 30 days of residency, which I think is something we all should be doing. Now, the ones that are suing, the Equality State Policy Center, is a voting rights group. They allege that the new law will impose an undue burden on the right to vote and is unconstitutionally vague as written. Attorneys from all over the country have flocked to both sides of the debate. There's already a coalition of 25 states and Guam that filed proposed amicus briefs on Friday, urging the court to allow the law to go into effect. Now, Wyoming follows 4 other states, Arizona, Kansas, Georgia, and Alabama, that have taken similar steps to ensure U.S. citizens are registered to vote. As for the Republican National Committee, quote, when a state's election laws are challenged in federal court, political parties should be granted intervention to protect their unique interests, the group argued in this Thursday's motion to intervene. Now, Gray asked the court to toss the case challenging Wyoming's new voter registration law. Attorneys for Secretary of State Chuck Gray asked a federal court Friday to dismiss the lawsuit, arguing that the complaint does not sufficiently demonstrate how the new law requirements could harm potential voters. We hear this all the time. They are always whining and complaining and saying, because we want to have only U.S. citizens vote, that, oh my God, somebody's going to be disenfranchised. Yes, non-citizen voters are going to be disenfranchised. I digress. All right, so Gray's attorneys argue that the ESPC has not demonstrated that the law will impose a severe burden on the right to vote. Therefore, the request for preliminary injunction should be denied. They also argue that ESPC lacks standing or the right to even bring the lawsuit. This is the ESPC's reasoning on why they have filed lawsuit. They said it will impede its, quote, core work of encouraging voters to register and participate in their democracy, unquote, and would require the group to, quote, redirect significant resources to increase its voter registration efforts, unquote. Now, did you follow that? So they may not even have standing. They think people are going to be disenfranchised. And oh, by the way, it's going to cause us to do more work. Anyway, so Gray's attorneys argue that they failed to identify anyone that would be harmed. It's all speculation. And ESPU has until July 9th to submit their response. So we're on to national info. Our source is VoteBeat from June 3rd, 2025. Trump's executive order, work on a new voting system guide, is already in motion. The executive order instructions for the U.S. Election Commission to work the barcode ban into a revision of the voluntary voting system guidelines, the certification standards that most states rely on for their voting equipment, and the multi-step process of altering the standards has already begun. There was a July 2nd meeting of the Technical Guidelines Development Committee, and there were a group of mainly officials and technical experts, and they planned on considering a draft to update the guidelines at the meeting. And the EAC chairman, Donald Palmer, said there's been security concerns expressed by the executive branch, state legislatures, and stakeholders on both sides of the aisle about the issue of barcodes and QR codes, and the July 2nd meeting was a required step in EAC's regular update process. So they are moving along with those updates. Now we're going to go to Vote Notes. Our Vote Notes this week is from the Michigan Chamber in the News. It says, sign at your own risk, understanding the fine print behind the 2026 ballot proposals. Now you're going to be able to find the link for all this information on our website as well under Vote Notes. It includes the graduated income tax. Its proponents refer to it as Invest in MI Kids, the minimum wage, Rank Michigan Vote, Committee to Protect Voter Rights, Americans for Citizen Voting, ban on lobbying, and paid family leave. The Michigan Chamber reminds citizens a 2026 ballot proposal might sound good, but is it? So these are people who are going to be going out there looking for signatures. They have a brief explanation for all of those topics we spoke about. So go to our Vote Notes and check it out. Next, And our final segment here is our trivia question. How old do you have to be to vote? The answer is 18. So that's the answer. We're across the country. You have to be 18 years old to actually vote. So I want to thank everyone for watching our program. In closing, I'd like to encourage everyone to go to OBBM Network TV, sign up and share. It's free. We want to be able to educate as many people as possible for watching our program where election integrity is what we're all about. So thank you again for watching and listening. I'm Linda Sinkowitz, and I'll see you next week.